All right, happy to bring on the podcast a welcome, an introduction to the Big Ten with Ryan Abraham, USCFootball.com. It is official, Ryan. I brought you on, I think, a year and a half ago that it was happening, but now next week, USC will be there at Big Ten Media Days. What's this like for you? We've been covering USC for so long. What's this like for the fan base, the Trojan fan?
Yeah, thanks for having me. First of all, good to talk to you again, and thanks for coming on the podcast of Champions, which we've now shifted to Big Ten football. Yeah, it's becoming more real. I haven't played the video game yet, but everyone's been talking about it. Like, that's real there. I did my first hit on Sirius XM Big Ten radio instead of Pac-12 radio. So now it's like, wow, this is like Midwestern football, and I'm like a part of it now. So it's definitely been a little surreal. I think for the fans, until you start, that first road trip to Michigan, I think it becomes more real for them there. But just the talk about looking at the schedule, it's like, oh, there's Wisconsin, there's Penn State, there's Michigan. Like, oh, you're going to Maryland? Like, yeah, it's kind of weird. I think it's still sinking in for a lot of people.
As you said, you had to change your podcast of Champions from Pac-12 focus to Big Ten focus. Now, the Pac-12 is dead. Like, I mean, what do you make of that reality, Ryan, as someone who's lived that for so long?
It's really sad, to be honest. I loved covering it. It was sort of, there was always the East Coast bias kind of thing, the Pac-12 after dark, the horrible leadership, what Larry Scott was doing to it. They had some, they signed the best TV deal back in like 2012 for like a minute, and then, it surpassed. And then they had the worst deal for, a longer than a decade, where it just kept getting worse and worse. And every other conference got deals made. So there was sort of like this lovable loser, bad news bear sort of thing with the Pac-12, and certainly some really good seasons from different teams. And this last season, I mean, the quarterback play was amazing. It was really good up and down. So it's kind of sad that they had such a good year in their final year of existence. And it wasn't fun to go to, Corvallis or Pullman, but, to see those two programs just sort of withering on the vine still is sad. It's sad the way it's all kind of turned out. But I mean, I guess, we keep moving forward. This sport's changed more in the last few years than it probably did the previous 30 or 40. So it's just kind of the new reality we got to get used to.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, USC, as everyone knows, historic powerhouse, comes with more national prestige, I think, than any of these programs. Now, whether it's more equipped than Oregon right away to compete in the Big Ten at the top, we'll see. But yeah, it has been a roller coaster of the last decade. Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian, Clay Helton. But now, what is the state of the program with Lincoln Riley now entering year 3 here?
Yeah, I thought it'd be a little more stable. It's just instability has sort of been the hallmark of USC football. And a lot of it was just been poor leadership. They got lightning in a bottle with Pete Carroll. He was perfect for them. Was a NFL coach, but a rah-rah guy that really related to players, and they had a lot of success and 7 straight BCS bowl games and all that. So they were, Heisman's and national championships like that. That was the peak of what like USC could be, but they had the right guy, and they weren't able to get the right athletic director for years and years. They really made bad hires. Lane Kiffin looks like a really good coach now, but probably a little early for him to be running USC. And Steve Sarkisian ran into his problems. He seemed to be doing a lot better now too. But Clay Helton was never equipped to be USC's head coach. He was sort of just the adult in the room when all this other chaos was going on. And Pat Hayden, who wasn't equipped to do his job as an athletic director, ends up hiring him. And Lynn Swann, who wasn't equipped to do his job, ends up extending him. And there was a lot of just miscues at the top. And I think when they brought in Lincoln Riley, you thought like, okay, this is going to settle things down. They hadn't hired a proven college, head coach at USC since like the 1920s with Howard Jones. Like, he had won a national championship at Yale. Everyone else has been like internal hires or someone from outside that might work out. And they've had a lot of great coaches, John McKay and John Robinson and stuff, but none of them were like proven at the college level. Lincoln Riley's the closest thing to that, a guy that won Heisman's and had number 1 picks and went to the college football playoff. And he had a lot of success in year 1, and it's sort of, faltered a little bit more in year 2. So we'll see. I think he's still, he's a young head coach. He's 40. I think his legacy still, it can be determined. But it's not gone as smoothly, I think, as some USC fans would like. And, he took over at a time when things are changing. USC hasn't been the best when it comes to integrating NIL into roster building. So I think that's been part of the problem too. So we'll see. I think, now that you're throwing in, put a whole new conference in there with all these powerhouses, not going to make his job any easier. So I think it's been long answer to the question. Sorry, but I think it's kind of slow, but it's coming along. We'll see. I mean, he's young coach, had a lot of success. I think you got to give him as much, rope as possible to figure this out in the next few years.
It's interesting because I heard the same thing about Michigan, the kind of slow to the NIL thing. I wouldn't have thought of USC as kind of slow to integrating to that, Ryan, just from the outside.
It was so funny. The Jordan Addison thing comes out. And so he was, if you remember, Biletnikoff Award winner at Pittsburgh. Pat Narduzzi was really upset. He was peeved that USC got him and all this talk. He got $3 million. And I'm looking at him like, USC, if you said they'd win 10 straight national championships, they wouldn't have been able to put together $3 million for a player back then. So there was no way that was the case. They were so, I think the sanctions set USC back a lot back in like 2012. They became so overly compliant. Like they weren't even involving their collective in the recruiting process until that Tennessee, Virginia, case was settled or whatever. And then, they weren't involved in that. And other schools, I think that's part of the problem is like USC looked at the letter of the law, what the NCAA said about NIL. And some schools like Texas A&M and Oregon were just like, nope, we're all in. And USC was like, oh, I don't think we should do that. And they've kind of put them behind a little bit. So yeah, you would think so. But since those sanctions, they've been like on the overly compliant train. And some schools have been that way. And it sucks because you had different rules for different schools. And because there was such a power vacuum and the NCAA was so terrible at their job, then you had a lot of schools following a rule that another school wasn't following, and there wasn't going to be any. And once they tried to go after Tennessee, boom, lawsuit. And they're like, nope, no rules for anything whatsoever. Then USC was like hoping there was going to be rules, and it was the exact opposite. So then they had to like change their tune a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, Illinois in the 80s got in trouble with the NCAA, and they were pretty compliant, after that because it terrified them, right? So it's understandable. So if you're bullish on USC, we'll do the concerns here in a second,
yeah,
Ryan, but why could they succeed right away in the Big Ten?
So I think if you look at the track record for USC's offense, Lincoln Riley's offense, yes, they lose Caleb Williams, who's number one pick, and one of the best players I've ever seen in person playing college football. I think Miller Moss can do a really good job. I think in general, though, they're going to score points just because that's just what they do. They got a lot of talented receivers. They got some good running backs, and I think they're going to be able to put up points. So probably a step back offensively, but nothing like a huge drop off. I would think if they do, that's going to be a problem. But I think the big improvement has to be on the defensive side of the ball. And we've talked to defensive players this offseason, and they would do like reps of whatever exercise, and they would do 118 of them because that was one of their rankings. I don't know if it was overall defense or something. And they were so upset about that because they were bad in 2022. And I was like, they can't get worse in 2023. And they did. And that's even for the transfers in, they're like, I just talked to Nate Clifton, who transferred in from Vanderbilt. And he was a defensive lineman. And he was saying, yeah, I'm doing 118 reps. And I'm not sure why, because I wasn't here, but it's sort of been this team thing. Like, we are going to get better on defense. And they hired a whole new defensive staff, and Danton Lynn comes in, who did a NFL guy, which sometimes it doesn't work out really well, but he turned UCLA around quickly. So I think when those NFL guys get it, that you can't spend, 1 million hours a week in a film, teaching all this stuff, you have to kind of keep it simpler for college players. He seemed to get it right away, and they turned it around. And I think there's a lot of optimism that they'll do that on defense. So if you put those two together, like maybe slightly worse offense, significantly, or even, just top half of the league defense, and you're going to be a lot better than what you were last year. And the schedule is tough because they play, LSU, Notre Dame out of conference, and, Michigan and Penn State and Wisconsin. And there's a lot of tough games, but they don't play the two probably most talented rosters in the conference, in Oregon and Ohio State. So they're winnable games. And if you say you even lose 3 of them, if you're 9-3, maybe finish third or something in the Big Ten, you're probably going to the playoffs. So I feel like that's where the optimistic USC person is going to come from. The pessimistic ones are telling me that they're going to lose every game and they're going to be terrible and stuff. But I think there's a path for, taking care of your business, getting, being okay on offense, or almost as you were last year, pretty much better on defense, and then winning some of those games that maybe it's that Penn State game at home, maybe it's a coin flip, but you win that one and you lose a couple others, and like, hey, we're right in the mix here, and you don't have to get maybe blown out by an Ohio State or an Oregon or something who look like they've just piled on rosters in the offseason. So I think long answer there, but I think it's kind of set up pretty well for them if they can take care of their own business.
Yeah, I would imagine, just because I'm a Bears fan, so I paid attention to Caleb Williams. Offensive line, trenches, is that the concern heading into the season, or what else would be the concern heading into a new conference?
Yeah, I think both lines. I think on the offensive line, we saw Caleb Williams. He's just a magician, and you'll see it with the Bears. Just he can do stuff off script that it's just, you can't teach. It's just there's instincts there. Miller Moss is definitely going to be following the recipe a little bit more. I used the analogy the other day where like Caleb Williams is more like a chef, and he's kind of like testing different, he's doing different things by feel and by taste. And Miller Moss is probably going to follow, like, if you need a cup and a half of flour, that's what you're using. He's going to do what Lincoln Riley says. And wow, that guy's open, I'll throw it to him. And he doesn't have to go off script as much. But if the offensive line breaks down, that's where like the magic of Caleb Williams sort of came into play a little bit more. Miller Moss is kind of athletic, but he's not, what a Caleb Williams is. So they're going to need, I think, their top 6-7 guys they feel pretty good about, but it's after that there's a lot of young guys. They really didn't recruit the offensive line well for the last few years of Clay Helton, so they've had good recruiting classes for offensive linemen, but those guys take a little while to develop. But a couple of young guys will probably play, some veterans that they brought in, but they're going to need. I think that's where on the offensive side the biggest question marks will be, and the same thing on the on the defensive side. They got some good defensive linemen, but they're not very deep. And they weren't able to. That's the hardest position probably to address in the portal, and so they lost guys more than they added them, and I think that's going to be a potential problem for them on the defensive side.
All right, I got to ask you, because we got a lot of overlap. A lot of Bears fans listen to this podcast as well. You've seen a lot of great quarterbacks in the century at USC. I mean, the line is as good as any school in the country. Oklahoma is probably up there with them, but Carson Palmer, Matt Leinart, Mark Sanchez, even Matt Barkley was pretty good for a while, and Sam Darnold, and now Caleb Williams. So what are the Bears getting in Caleb Williams?
Yeah, he's the best one that I've seen, in person, and like different, Carson Palmer, 6'5", and just you could throw the ball through a wall. And, Matt Leinart he's one of the best college quarterbacks I've ever seen. But as far as like talent and go to the next level, like, I've talked to Matt about it. Like, he's like, yeah, Caleb's amazing. And then just he's just that way. I think after winning the Heisman his sophomore year, there was a lot of contention just when Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma, and we still hear from Oklahoma fans about that. And anytime USC trips and falls, and they do that plenty, like the Oklahoma fans are ready, like, see, you're terrible. And it's like, I don't know. It's just weird. They keep talking about it, but the fact that he came over, they were upset about that. And, I think, he paints his fingernails because his mom, is in that business and stuff, and people sort of had issues with that. And I think when he wins the Heisman sophomore year, and you have to come back for a whole year of college football still, and people are like, wait, he's still playing? And like, yeah, he was only a true sophomore. Once you're assumed to be the number one pick, all they're going to do is try to shoot you down and that's all what was happening. We were hearing weird stories that he wanted, a partial ownership of the team, and it's hard to get to know him, but you talk to his family, when you got to talk to him, that just wasn't who he was. If he was emotional after a game, it's because he really doesn't want to lose, and he's trying to win and go out there. And I think if you're a Bears fan, go back and watch the Holiday Bowl, because Caleb Williams didn't play, but Miller Moss did, and he played really well, threw 6 touchdown passes, and no one in the stadium, I don't think, was happier for Miller Moss than Caleb Williams. And I think that kind of shows you the kind of person that he is. He's just, I think there was a lot of weird things were said about him, mostly just because they didn't know what else to do. But I think he's going to come in there and lead that franchise and do good things. He just seems one of those guys that is a can't miss kind of prospect. So just in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, there's a big basketball school here at Illinois, Ryan. So I got to ask you, Eric Musselman, Illinois played him a couple years ago in the NCAA tournament. That's a big name for USC to bring in here as they start in the Big Ten. Like, what do you think of their projection as they get to a new league?
They have one guy from the roster last year, someone that they didn't really play. It's so bizarre. There was for USC basketball, they've always been like an also ran. The fans don't get anywhere near as upset. They have some passionate fans, but it's smaller. I mean, most everyone at USC, they're loving the football team, and they've had some, windows of success, but just too many times they had a team that was talented, that you had guys that were going to get drafted and all that, and then they still don't, they still don't make a run in the tournament. And I think USC fans have just become kind of numb to it. But that's it's a big time hire, someone that's had a lot of success. They bring in a really, just their roster is just full of experience. But there's guys that at like lower levels. There's guys, but a lot of like seniors and guys that have played tons and tons of college basketball. So even though they haven't played together, there's a lot of experience there. I'm curious to see what this kind of experiment brings. How he recruits, because USC's recruited well on the basketball trail, but they just haven't like turned that into the kind of success, especially postseason success, as they should have. So there's a lot of optimism, I think, with Eric Musselman coming in. Now, he gets replaced by a legend too at Arkansas, so that's a weird one. But I think some of the Arkansas fans are happy for him. Just want him to go try new things, and we'll see what he can do. I mean, it's been hard to win at USC when it comes to basketball, but he's one of the more proven coaches that they've gone out and hired. So we'll see what he does.
Last question. I just want to throw this out there. I know football is the focus and maybe a little bit of basketball, but USC was number 11, I think, in the Learfield Cup standing. So obviously they're pretty good at a lot of sports there. Is there any other sports that Illinois fans should know of that USC can bring in and be pretty dang successful in the Big Ten?
Yeah, well, I don't think there's going to be beach volleyball in the Big Ten, or there wasn't. But they've won 4 consecutive national championships in that. But the baseball team, they have the most national championships of anybody. I think track still does. They haven't won, those teams haven't won. I think baseball won in like 98, and track, they won a ton in the 70s. Those were like premier programs for USC. They had Mark McGuire and Tom Seaver, a bunch of guys like that over the years. But, their baseball started to come back. If the roster limits, USC been really hurt on the baseball side because it's a very expensive private school. You can only give partial scholarships mostly. If what we're hearing now, you can have like 30 roster spots, all scholarships. They're probably going to be back in baseball pretty quickly. So that's definitely one to watch. Their women's basketball team, they hired Lindsey Gottlieb from the NBA and had Juju Watkins, who was the number 1 recruit in the country last year. They're bringing in transfers. I mean, they made an Elite 8 run last year and lost to UConn. So I think their women's basketball team will be fun to watch, kind of in the Big Ten there too. But they're good at a lot of other sports like water polo, which maybe not as things that aren't as big on the West Coast. Tennis they've been good at. But I would definitely watch the women's basketball. And then, we'll see what baseball is able to do, especially if they get that bump in the scholarship limits.
Yeah. Well, Ryan Abraham, I hope the Big Ten doesn't give USC too many 9 a.m. Pacific time starts. That'd be interesting. We're used to the 11 a.m.s here, but with the new deals, I'm sure it'll be more afternoon. But hey, thanks for getting us up to speed on USC as they join the Big Ten here, Ryan.
Thanks, Jeremy. I know the one on the schedule this year is Rutgers plays a Friday night in Los Angeles at 8 p.m. Pacific. So that's 11 p.m. their local time. And that sucks for Rutgers, but you don't want to. They've mostly scheduled like 6 p.m. games at the Coliseum. Like, you can't go to work that day and make it. Like, you would have to just take off work. The traffic would be horrible to try to get to the Coliseum then. So at least it's a little better later. But if you're Rutgers, you don't be playing at 11 p.m. So that's a weird one.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it, man.
No problem.
Great stuff, man. Appreciate it.
Sure.